Hello. Tonight I'm in my turtleneck sweater that I have, and on the inside of it, it is actually like a kind of velvety material, so it's actually really, really comfy for a cold July day. You wouldn't think it was July in the UK at the moment. You'd think it was like March or late September maybe. So yeah, I do feel a bit Francis Bacony in this jumper. But I wanted to come in and talk about my recent reading life and my thoughts on this book. First of all, let me see. So I started The Eighth Life, which is this beautiful book here, and after like page five, I gave up on it, which is a massive shame. But yeah, it was really, really bad. Well, I mean, I've not read it. I've only read the first 5 pages, but from the first 5 pages, it was really, really bad. So the first paragraph of the book is this story actually has many beginnings. It's hard for me to choose one because all of them constitute the beginning. So that I was like, okay. And then the rest of that little prologue is it's just very, very heavy exposition that I think is meant to intrigue me, but it was just making me feel very it wasn't drawing me in the way it should do. There was one part where the main guy is saying, the evening a man told me he wanted to grow normal with me, Brilka, my dead sister's daughter, and my only niece set off for Vienna, a place she had conceived of as her home. So that I was like, why not just start with that? The main point of the narrative so far that is actually a transition into something. So to me, that seems like what should have been the first sentence. But I was like, this is 923 pages. If by page two I'm already finding kind of quite big mistakes. So then later down on page two, outside a light rain began to fall. It was June, a warm evening with weightless clouds that decorated the sky like little balls of cotton wool. And then I was like, okay, that's two strikes already by page two. Clouds like cotton wool, like that is got to be like one of the biggest cliches I've ever seen. So that was alarming. So apparently, some like 11-year-old girl's gone missing, and I meant to care, even though I don't know anything about this girl. And then my name is Nisa. It contains a word that in our mother tongue signifies heaven, Zar. Perhaps my life up till now has been a search for this particular heaven, given to me as a promise that has accompanied me since my birth. My sister's name was Daria. Her name contains the word chaos. Aria, churning up, stirring up, the messing up and the not putting right. I am duty bound to her. I am duty bound to her chaos. I have always been duty bound to seek my heaven in her chaos. Christ, that's bad. And to me, that was giving me kind of incest tease. I have always been duty bound to seek my heaven in her chaos. I mean, but that, I mean, incest tease isn't going to put me off the book. Like, if anything, that would have drawn me in a little bit more. But I was like, just explaining to me what the names mean. Like, let me look that up, and then I can think for myself about the characters. But just telling me straight off, like, Jesus, that's bad. That's bad. So yeah, I stopped reading after that, and it is like over 900 pages. So I think I dodged a bullet. It's really, really beautiful, but sorry. Have any of you read this book? If you have, if it gets amazing, let me know. But apparently it's like a Russian saga and it's meant to be like supernatural as well. But from page five, I got the vibe that if it was going to be supernatural, it was going to be really shitty supernaturalism. So I put that down and then I picked up this really old, tatty edition of Persuasion by Jane Austen. It is physically falling apart. Like I'm opening pages and they're just falling out. But at the moment, I'm really, really loving it. So it feels good to be with a writer who knows the weight of a sentence again. I've read Pride and Prejudice, one of my favourite novels. I've read Northanger Abbey, very boring in my opinion, and I read some of Emma, and I think I got to about page 25. Find it boring, put it down. But so far, I'm loving this. So I would probably read Emma again, like start it again and see. But yeah, I'm loving Persuasion. That's my recent reading life. What else? I've also got a cup of tea in my Matilda mug. That's very lovely. And now onto this. So this novel follows Chinonzo. It follows his whole life, basically. Um, he starts off as a chicken farmer in Nigeria, and then he meets this girl who's like her family like well-to-do, and she's going off to study pharmacy, I think, pharmaceuticals or something like that. You know, because he's a farmer, he's like very basically low class, so they don't want her to be with him. I got into this book because Hannah Tay basically sold it to me before Christmas, I think. Oh, it must have been last summer she sold it to me. Hannah Tay did a video absolutely gushing about this book, making out like it was a huge masterpiece, and she loved it. So that's great for her. I don't know if I was expecting it to be a masterpiece, but just from what she told me, it sounded really, really interesting and beautiful. And from reading it, I do get what she meant, but for me, it wasn't that interesting or magnificent or beautiful overall. But there were some particularly beautiful parts that I liked about it. So the book's set in Nigeria for the most part, and Chinonzo basically saves the girl from killing herself. So she hates her life at some point when she's young, and then she's about to leap off a bridge, and then he's in his like van with his chickens, and then he drives past and is like, "Don't do it, babe." So she doesn't do it, and then they fall in love, and her family hate him. So I really enjoyed reading about that. Like the bits where they fell in love were just so beautiful, and like it wasn't like cringy romance to me. It was really, really good writing, and she doesn't really care that he's a chicken farmer, and he seems quite not ashamed of being a chicken farmer, but very aware that his social economic status is very different from hers. So he's very much like trying to make his farm like a nicer place, and it's so sweet, and it's very, very heartwarming, and I thought their relationship was really, really beautiful, and they seemed very, very in sync, and she seemed to still really respect him for his job, and she seemed to really love him even more for being a farmer. And then he just seemed to still not really take that in. But the whole thing that like the main problem I had with this book was the fact that it ends up being kind of a tragedy, and then the narratology behind the book is what really irked me. The novel is writing into this like Igbo tradition from Nigeria. So at the start of the book, it has this, which is like the cosmology explaining it basically. So there's like the 8 different cycles of reincarnation or something. So that was fascinating to me, and I really want to read more about Igbo cosmology after reading this book. So that's a really good thing. The novel, you might expect it to follow Chinonzo, and it does follow him for the most part, but it basically follows him in... The novel is actually set in first person, and basically the novel is narrated by his guardian angel. So in the Igbo tradition, in this book, they have what they call a chi, which is basically his guardian angel. So you know something like bad has happened, and that I guess you know Chinonzo is dead, or he's going through a intermediate stage where he's not sure if he's going to reincarnate into something else or not, I think. And then his chi is narrating the novel. The chi isn't really narrating the novel to the reader, they're narrating the novel to like the Igbo god, like the great big deity person figure. And the chi is basically having to explain why Chinonzo's life went bad and basically trying to redeem him. And to me, I thought that she did a really, really bad job. So what I was really liking about the book is that I think it is nuanced in some ways. So apparently it's got allusions to the Odyssey. I've not read the Odyssey, so I don't know about that. But I think the idea of like a Nigerian-born writer having that kind of dialogue with ancient Greek myth could be really, really interesting, but I don't know that much about it. So maybe once I've read the Odyssey, I will be completely bowled over by this book when I remember it, but I don't see that happening. And also, let's talk about the cover. So the cover looks traumatic. I think the cover is actually okay, but it looks as sad as the novel kind of is sad, so I can't say that they missold it to me based on that cover. What I find really nuanced about the chi narrating it is that you old style narrative where you think it's like this master narrative where it's like an all-knowing third person narrator. Well, he's not a third person narrator, but he basically kind of straddles being first person and third person, because even though he's an I narrator, he's telling the story of Chinonzo, so it's very, very it's first person, but it's kind of like very close third person. So I find that very nuanced. And that she was kind of making it like he knows everything about Chinonzo. So that I really enjoyed that kind of positioning. But the more and more I read it, the more and more I questioned the Chi, and I'm pretty sure the Chi is meant to be a reliable narrator. But by the end of it, I was like, you're either a really unreliable narrator or you're like the worst Chi ever. And basically, you shouldn't be redeeming Chinonzo. Chinonzo should be redeeming you to like the big god, because he should be like, big god, why did you give me this really shitty Chi that's allowing me to make all these bad decisions in his life? So early on in the book, the Chi is like, oh, Chinonzo, I know he's a very lucky person. He's in love with this girl and he's having sex with her. And I really thought the moments of sex and connection between them were really, really beautiful and really well done. And they were like making me well up with tears. They were making me so happy to read them. And that doesn't really happen that much in books. So I was like, this was at like around page 150-ish, like up to that. And I was like, if it carries on like this could be one of my favourite novels. But not so much, unfortunately. And he was like, yes, Chinonzo is a very, very lucky person. So I was like, okay, so you're telling me he's lucky. And I don't know if that was meant to be putting me off the scent, but he's really, really not lucky. He's like one of the most unluckiest characters ever. So he goes off to Cyprus. I mean, this is kind of doing spoilers, but, you know, it was the Man Booker like the other year. So I'm assuming people who are interested in it have already read it. So he goes off to Cyprus to study some degree because he thinks the family will accept him then. His girlfriend doesn't want him to go. She's like, no, don't, because, you know, you're not going to be here, so we might as well be single again. So I don't really see why she doesn't just, I don't know, go to Cyprus as well. Or maybe he should have taken the initiative to look up going to a similar uni to her if they wanted to do that. But the novel doesn't really discuss that much. But basically, he has like this friend that he grew up with who he used to bully, and then the friend comes back from being in the army, and basically is like, go to Cyprus, like, I can literally get you into the uni there, and I'll help you out. And then it turns out, oh, he's a villain actually, this friend, and he wasn't a friend at all. But I was like, I mean, at this point, Chinonzo, even though he's meant to be intelligent, but he's not been like traditionally educated, and he's not necessarily from an academic background, so he's not really sure the way these things go. But I was like, surely you could ask around and find out, not just go on this one person that's recently come back into your life who's telling you to up sticks and move. So he sells his chicken farm, and his Chi basically he goes through this kind of debate with his girlfriend where she's like, please don't go, Chinonzo, please, I just know like things will go bad if you go. And then he's like, no, babe, you know. But he also calls her mummy. He calls her mommy or mummy. And really, that should have really rubbed me up the wrong way, because I'm like, calling your girlfriend mummy. But because I'd never really read that in a book, I find that actually kind of really sweet. Even though it is maybe kind of a little bit messed up that he calls his girlfriend mummy. But to me, it seemed really, really cute, which maybe is weird, but I'm like, maybe you should listen to your mother, Chinonzo, and not go. Or maybe just go to a uni in Nigeria or something like that. Something maybe a little bit less ambitious. So he's like, no, I need to leave. I'm going to go to Cyprus. Like, I've already booked it all. I'm going away. And then when I come back from uni, we're going to be together, babe. And then the Chi, who's narrating it, is like, he should go. Like, even though bad things are going to happen to him, he should go because, you know, he's lucky. So then he goes to Cyprus, and literally all his life just plummets. Like, he hates it there. He finds out that he's not actually at the uni, really, and that he's been ripped off by this friend, not friend, who he grew up with. And then he ends up going to prison. So he gets... There's kind of like this plot made against him to drag him into this thing, and this woman makes out that he rapes her when he doesn't at all, and you feel really bad for him. So I know you are meant to feel really bad for him. Like, it's meant to be very tragic that he goes to prison and stuff. But then, and this is when the novel really started to plummet for me, because he goes to prison and then I'm like, so he can't appeal or anything? The police don't find anything questionable about the way this went down. And I guess it was meant to be a kind of discussion about, you know, how black men get imprisoned wrongly, and that happens all the time. Like, even in the UK, that happens a lot. Like, people don't speak about that, but it happens a lot. And every year, the government basically has to give hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds in damages because they end up getting sued and taken to court by these people who are wrongly imprisoned. So anyway, that's British, the prison system. But so he goes to Cyprus, and then in prison, it basically just brushes over prison. So he's in prison, and I was like, okay, so now he's in prison, and his life gone to shit. I want to know what his life was like in prison, because when you go from your life just being totally different to being a chicken farmer in Nigeria, going to Cyprus, this new place you don't know, and then you're in prison in Cyprus, like, it must be really, really bizarre and scary. But the novel kind of really glossed over his time in prison, so that was really when I started questioning the narrator and the writing behind the book, where I was like, okay, so he's skipping over the imprisonment, and it just made me feel like, why are you skipping over it? Like, obviously, if he's in prison, not much is going to be happening. But then once he leaves prison, so he's in prison for like at least 3 years, and then he goes back to Nigeria, I guess, to get revenge on the guy who basically missold him coming over from Nigeria to Cyprus. And then he basically wants revenge, and he wants his girlfriend back. And then she's got a new bae now, so she's got a new boyfriend, and then he's like completely devastated, and he hates the guy who betrayed him even more. But at the same time, I was thinking, but you chose to go to Cyprus. Like, she did tell you she didn't want you to go. So, and during this time, he also starts dating other people. None of them he really has such a deep connection with. But I'm like, if you don't have such a deep connection with them, just don't date them anymore, maybe. But it does seem like he gets very emotionally cagey and shut down inside. So that seems like that's why he dates people, because now he just wants to live for him and get as much pleasure from life as he can. So that was quite sad, because at the start he just seemed so open-hearted, and it was really hard seeing how tragic his life went. But at the same time, I'm like, well, now, you've been freed from prison. Now you've got your chicken farm back, more or less. Like, you could start over again, really. Now the friend who betrayed him, he makes up with him, and then, well, he makes up with him after just being horrible to him. But the whole way through, I was like, so Chi, why did you tell me he was lucky when he's really not lucky? Like, so that was why I was questioning the narrator, because by the end of the book, like, the ending is really, really sad, and I was like questioning the messages behind it. I was like, so what is the story like? Because society, like the world, kind of screws black men over. They should have tragic lives, or I wasn't quite sure what it was trying to say. Maybe it was trying to say that, the reader should take away that this needs to change. And I mean, I definitely got that, but just as a story, it felt very dissatisfying, the ending. Yeah, the ending was quite bleak and extreme. But I was like, why should he be redeemed? Because I just don't really see anything that he's done to be redeemed. Like, plenty of people go through heartbreak. Plenty of people have bad things happen to them. And I don't think just because you have bad things happen to you, that makes you a necessarily redeeming character. Like, I think it's the choices you make following from these things, and your outlook on life, and the way you tackle problems, that makes you worthy of redemption, possibly. And I was really disappointed with the Chi. I was like, you're a shit Chi, because you're the one who told him to go to Cyprus, basically. You let him do it. Like, if you'd plucked up the courage, maybe you should wait a while and see. Maybe defer a year and wait. But the Chi does nothing. So I'm like, you're literally the guardian angel. Like, you should be like protecting him a bit. Like, I didn't like that. And that's my thoughts on this book, really. Didn't really like it much. Can't say I'd recommend it, really. I mean, if you're interested in the Igbo cosmology, maybe read it. But this author also wrote The Fisherman. I've not read The Fisherman. I'm not really that interested in reading it, because I imagine it would be a very sad story as well, for some reason. But maybe it's not sad. If it's really good, let me know in the comments. But on the front, the New York Times has said that Chigozie Obioma is the heir to Chinua Achebe. And I haven't read Chinua Achebe, but I really want to read No Longer at Ease by him, because apparently that is writing into the Igbo tradition as well. So I am really interested in that now. So I'm definitely going to look at buying that once I have money again. Yes. Have you read this? If you have, what thoughts did you have on it? And next, I will probably be doing my thoughts on Lighthouse Keeping by Jeanette Winterson, because I read that recently and enjoyed it. So thank you for watching. Bye.